Hello and good morning, everybody. Sadly, I don't have any coffee with me. I haven't made it yet. It is currently just before 8 o'clock in the morning. I just dropped my love bug off at work. I have to work soon, and I usually don't film videos back to back, as in I was out here filming last night, and I'm back out here again this morning. Today, we're going to be doing a garden tour, and it actually has only been a little less than 3 weeks since I did the May garden tour. But I was looking at it last night and so many things look different and have changed. Right now is just the season of things growing very, very quickly. And I have a trip to go on at the end of next week. So I thought I'd go ahead and get this recorded for you guys because I work every single day from today until through the 14th. So my first day off is the 15th, and that is the day that I'm leaving to drive across the country. So I just want to go ahead and get something filmed for you guys, and everything is looking so gorgeous out here. So let's just go ahead and get into this garden tour. We're gonna start with the worst part. The fact that I have neglected the things inside this greenhouse. Some things are still okay, some things not really. I harvested a bunch of carrots that looked that are way too woody to eat, and some of them just kept growing, I guess. Over here, we have some dead bells of Ireland, some dead coreopsis, some dead scabiosa, some dead cosmos, some dead zinnias, and some almost dead love in a mist. More dead zinnias, dead basil. We got some parsley that's still somehow alive over there that I actually need to revive because my parsley is flowering. Over here, the only thing living is this lavender and thyme and rosemary over here. So at least my herbs are still doing well. This is just growing in through the side of the greenhouse. Here is some almost dead strawflower, one single tomato, and a couple zinnias, some sweet alyssum. The reason that most of this is dead is because my garden is full. I don't have much room to put anything in it. Oh, the nasturtium in that pot is dying. That's sad, but the amaranth in here is doing good. And then I need to clean up this mess, but that'll be another day's problem. We've got blackberries, 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 and blackberries. All of these are thornless blackberries. I don't know what variety. I know they are thornless. My mom and dad got them for me and gave them to me, and it actually has a tiny little berry on it, so that's cute. There is a blackberry bush at my new house, or actually there's a ton of blackberry bushes at my new house, but most of them are in an area that we don't plan to leave full of bushes and blackberries, and they weren't planted there. They're just wild growing, so a lot of them are going to get cut down, sadly, but they are almost ready to be harvested from, so we're leaving them up until I can harvest from them, at least for this year. Over here, we've got dead lemon balm, dead catnip, one single dead pansy, 2 dead chamomile, and then all of this is just empty containers of things that never germinated, so it's just soil that needs revived. Walking out of the greenhouse, we see this flat of things on the ground. We've got some coreopsis, basil, zinnias, a little more amaranth, and a lot of this is getting destroyed by bugs, but I don't have any space to put it. I've already sold a lot of plants, I've given away a lot of plants, I've planted my plants in the garden closer together than they probably should be, so sorry. Right here on the table, we have one single Sugar Rush peach pepper that looks really good. I thought it was going to die, and it came right back. And then we have 5 of these Orange Hat Dwarf Cherry tomatoes, which are getting hit with blight pretty hard, sadly, but all of them have quite a few tomatoes on them, so I should be able to harvest them soon, and then the plants will probably die, but that's okay. These are orange tomatoes, like I said, so this one is actually almost ripe. That'll be my first ripe tomato from these. Yes, this is the green stalk. Still empty and sad, except for this one container right up here at the top. And this nasturtium is doing really well. It has actually started growing and getting fluffier. There's a lot of new baby leaves down at the bottom of it. This green stalk will soon be planted out with strawberries, and by soon, I mean hopefully tomorrow morning, but definitely before I go on my trip, I'm going to transplant the strawberries from these containers into here. Okay, let's go ahead and start at this corner, because why not? These are strawberries, as I told you. Some of them are Ozark Beauty strawberries, I think this container, but this container and one other one that I have in there is mostly just strawberries that my mom got from an auction from the Amish that live around here. So I don't know what variety they are, or if they're June bearing or ever bearing. They're just strawberries, so I'm not really sure what type they are. So starting here with the cucumber trellis, this container has a kale plant. This is lacinato kale. And then in with the kale we have 3 cucumbers and a pansy. This pansy is a Brushstrokes Viola pansy from Baker Creek Seed. And these are Richmond green apple cucumbers, which is also from Baker Creek Seed. Look at this. This cucumber has only been on this string for less than 48 hours, and I already have to wrap it around more. That's what I mean by things are just growing so fast in the garden right now. So these are Richmond green apple cucumbers. I just harvested this kale the night before last, and I used it in a soup, and then I removed the rest of it from the stems and have it in the fridge right now, but I'm going to put it in a bag and freeze it so that whenever I want kale, I can use it. In this next container here, we have another kale plant. I think I have 4 kale plants that are all kind of along this row. And this container also has 3 cucumbers, just like the other one, but these ones are Monica cucumbers. And there's tiny little cucumber babies on it. Look at those little guys. That's exciting. And then with the kale and the cucumbers, we have some basil, which I have been pruning in order to force more growth. Oh, and that basil is Emerald Everleaf basil. In this next container, we have a bush of oregano, which isn't much of a bush right now. I chopped it down just the other day. There's a whole basket of oregano in my house. Then in with that oregano, we have 4 cucumbers. There are roly-polies in this bed. I just found roly-polies on the strings with the cucumbers. These are lemon cucumbers, which is my favorite kind of cucumber, so I'm very excited about those. Now in this next container, we have a lacinato kale, and we used to have a sprouting broccoli, but the sprouting broccoli was shading this container so much that these cucumbers look like this. They are so thin and spindly and sad because they just had no sunlight at all. Like for comparison, almost the same spot, much bigger, and then even more towards the sun, much bigger. Like look at this in comparison to this. That's crazy. So I cut down the sprouting broccoli, which ended my experiment of whether or not sprouting broccolis would be more viable during the spring and summer. But I needed the space, and that's okay. I'm gonna have to remake my garden when I move anyway, so hopefully I'll be able to have room for more things that I want. And I won't have to compete for sunlight space like that. Alright, going around the corner, you see some big tomatoes here. There's actually some right there, here, and then down at the bottom, there's one right here, one there. There's a bunch of tomatoes on this plant. This is a Thorburns terracotta tomato, so the tomatoes are going to end like a deep orange color. I grew these last year, and I think per plant it probably produced the most individual tomatoes, even though they weren't the best of quality, but I also wasn't doing the best of gardening last year, so I'm trying to just continually get better, get more fruits, get better fruits and get better at just taking care of my plants. So right now these look really, really good. There's even some tiny ones forming up here. And in with this is just another kale plant, and nothing is planted down at the bottom. This on the ground, I don't know if you can even tell where the pile starts and ends, but this is a pile of tomato leaves and suckers that I pruned off of the tomatoes yesterday when I was finishing trellising them up. There was a lot. There is still a lot. Generally, people don't wait until their tomatoes are this tall to start putting the strings into the trellis, but I had some strings in, and then I ran out of string, and then I ran out of time. Lovebug got me some more string yesterday morning, and it took yesterday morning and yesterday evening, just spurts here and there when I had time, to get all of these tomatoes trellised up. And I think I at least still have 1 liter, maybe 2 that two, this one right here. So 2 tomato liters that need trellised, and maybe 1 or 2 tomatillo liters that need trellised. I've never seen anybody else trellis tomatillos on a string, but it's working pretty well for me so far, so I guess we'll figure it out. But it is much easier to put the tomatoes on string trellises when they're small. I had to work really hard not to break anything or make the fruits fall off and things like that. So I suggest, if you're going to trellis like this, add the strings when the tomatoes are between a foot tall and 18 inches tall, so that you can easily just wind them around and not have to worry about breakage of your plants. That's my bad. So in this next container, we have, at the very bottom, is a mesclun lettuce mix. So this looks like some kind of spinach, I don't know. This is definitely a bok choy or a baby choy bok choy or something, just from what it looks like. This one was a weed. But this is just a mix of different kinds of lettuces, arugula, mustard. I'm not sure exactly what all came in the mix. And then back here, this crazy looking thing is English thyme. And then we have a Cosmo right here, which has a few flowers on it. How pretty. This lettuce and the Cosmo and the thyme aren't growing very fast because they are underneath the shade of these tomatoes, which right now isn't a good thing necessarily. But in the heat of the summer, when it's 95 degrees outside and these plants would usually flower, they're going to be doing fine because they'll be under the shade story of the tomatoes. And then the tomatoes in this container are Brad's Atomic Grape tomatoes. They look like this as they're growing, and those streaks start to get more purple. It is a very stripy tomato. These are not my favorite tasting tomato. Not that they're bad tasting, they taste fine, just a little bit watery. The skin is pretty thick, and they take a long time to ripen. Mostly I keep growing them because my love bug says that they remind him of his Italian grandmother, and I just think that's adorable, so how could I possibly deny him that? This is a wall of tomatoes, as my love bug called it last night. Just a whole wall. You can barely see through it now. You can only see through it because I cut off all of these suckers and stuff, so it really was a wall. In this next one, I seeded Gustav's salad lettuce, but none of it popped up. But now, as I'm currently looking, I see a bunch of sprouts right in here. So I don't know if those are lettuce or not, but I guess I'll let them grow. And then the tomatoes in this container are Napa Rosé cherry tomatoes, and I have a few of them starting to ripen just in here. But there are quite a few fruits on these plants. Little baby ones up here. Actually, there's 2 liters on here. I didn't even realize. Oh, there's 3. Oh no. This plant, this is a liter right here. This liter is from that same plant, this one. And then this front plant has a leader right here. So yeah, I still need a few more trellis strings. I tend to let the cherry tomatoes have more leaders than the slicer tomatoes. And I let them have more leaders just because the fruits are smaller and they ripen faster, and they eventually run out of like room on the one stem to produce fruits. So I just let them go ahead and have multiple. So there's 3 cherry tomatoes in here. I'll let each one have at least 2 leaders, making it 6 leaders just from this one container of tomatoes. And then in the back there is a pansy. I don't know what variety it is. I bought it from Hirsch last summer, and it's still living, so I don't know what variety that is. I'm sorry. In this next container, there are 2 tomatoes, a pansy. This pansy is a Brushstrokes Viola pansy that I started from seed, so I do know what that one is. And then seated at the bottom down here, I have giant noble spinach, which has not been doing very well, probably due to the lack of sunlight from being behind these tomatoes. But that's fine. It was kind of experimental anyway, so that's okay. And then the 2 tomatoes in here are Castelluto Genovese tomatoes, and these 2 tomatoes are a good example of what I mean by leaders. So this one plant comes out of the ground. Just in case you're wondering, these little nubbies are roots forming along the stem. It is very, very humid in Missouri, so a lot of the times you don't even have to make the stems come in contact with water. They just kind of root themselves. So this is one plant coming out of the ground, or coming out of the container, and right here it split off into 2 leaders. And sometimes, or usually, a lot of people would just cut this leader off and only let the tomato have this one. I personally like to trim it down to 2 leaders, sometimes even 3, depends on what I want. That fruit doesn't look like it's doing so good. I'm gonna pinch it off. So what I like to do is give it at least 2 leaders from as close to the bottom as I can. So if one would have grown from right here, that would have been great, but it didn't. So we came up to here and I let that one grow. Now as you come up the plant, these little guys will form in between your leaves and your main stems, and these are called suckers. Those will produce new leaders on your plant. Let me show you a bigger one. So here's that same plant on this left leader, and eventually that left leader broke into 4 leaders. I cut 2 off, left one going, and then this one from here is what you would consider a sucker. So this here is the main stem, here's a leaf, and here's a sucker coming out. So I didn't cut this one off because it was such a strong one that I think it would make a decent leader for the plant, and it is already so big. But this is a good example for me to show you. So coming up this leader, that's a sucker technically. You can just pick it off when they're small. This one's small, you can just break it off. But if you let them keep growing, they get up to this size. So this is a perfect and beautiful example of a sucker. Here's a main stem of a tomato. Here's a main leaf. And then in between, in the V of the main stem and a main leaf, is this new, what looks to be, stem. That is a sucker. We take that off and we compost it. Or you can root these in water and have a whole new tomato plant. So later in the season, when my plants are starting to look worse, but I still have these green suckers at the top, I will pluck these off, root them in water, cut down all of my tomato plants, and then plant the new ones in their place so that I can still get fruit until my frost date. It is not nearly time to do that yet, so this guy will be composted. So these 2 are Castelluto Genovese tomatoes. There are some fruits on them. It's these bumpy guys here. There's a little one there. There's one right here. And there's at least 1 leader that I need to trellis up. In the next container, we have a sunflower that I started in a pot and planted out here as early as I could. And it is getting pretty thick. It's now thicker than my thumb. Has multiple heads on it coming up the stalk. Here's a flower head. Here's a double flower head. Here's one big flower. Two right here. Two unbloomed right here. And another one up here. And then this one that is already blooming and almost done. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there, even though the bloom is gonna die, because if the birds want to eat something, they can eat that, and then if any seeds fall, then it will seed itself, and I'll have more sunflowers. In with this sunflower are my favorite kind of tomatoes. It is a Dr. Wychie. I'm not sure how to say that. I say Wychie usually, so I'll go with that. They're Dr. Wychie yellow tomatoes. They get so big, and they are so sweet, and they're very meaty. They don't hold a lot of water in my experience. So I only have 3 big fruits on there right now, but I have plenty of flowers coming on. So soon I will have a lot of those, and that makes me very happy. In this last container on the corner, we have a pansy from Hirsch, a Genovese basil, and 2 tomatoes. These are Norwood Miners tomatoes, little salad-sized tomatoes here. And this is the only plant that I have gotten ripe tomatoes off of yet. And there are so many more tomatoes on it already. Little baby ones. Little baby ones, little baby ones. They're just everywhere on these plants. So these tomatoes are really good. They're a little bit watery, but they're so sweet that the watery almost doesn't even matter. And then I've got an Alaska variegated nasturtium right here, which has some seed pods on it. Someone had asked where nasturtium seeds come from, and this is where they come from. So here is a good flower, like a nice healthy flower right now, and just here, right where the stem meets the flower, while it's producing, it will make seed, and then the flower will die back, and all that will be left is this tiny little seed pod, and it will grow into a big seed pod. Generally they have 2 to 3 seeds per little pod. You let them get bigger and you just pluck them off. This one didn't sit long enough for the seed to actually dry out. So this is what it looks like right now. But that's fine, because I didn't want to save these seeds anyway. I was just trying to show you as an example. Here's another one. So it is very easy to save nasturtium seeds. There's that side of the tomato wall. Alright. Coming around to the middle of my U-shaped garden. Here is a flowering parsley plant that I almost cut down last night until I noticed this little guy. This is a swallowtail butterfly caterpillar, and they have such bright colors, bright orange, green, and black. I guess that's yellow, not orange, but they are so pretty. Swallowtail caterpillars eat parsley and dill most of the time, also milkweed, and they turn into the most gorgeous butterflies that act as really amazing pollinators. So even though that bush is flowering and the caterpillar is going to eat it, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave the caterpillar, I'm going to leave the plant, and then hopefully it'll turn into a butterfly and it'll stick around. So only one swallowtail caterpillar right now, but last year I had a lot, so if I leave this parsley plant, I hope that I will get some more. And then other than parsley in this container, we have San Marzano Roma tomatoes. This is my first year growing Roma tomatoes, and I am surprised at how many fruits there are per little stem and how quickly they formed. There's more here, more here. Now on this particular plant, I have cut off a couple of the leaders on accident because I didn't read the tag before I started pruning. for the case of Roma tomatoes, they are determinate tomatoes. There are two varieties of tomatoes, determinate and indeterminate. Determinate tomatoes will grow to a determined height, produce a determined amount of fruit, and then they'll be done. They're going to set all their fruit at one time, you harvest it, and then get rid of the plant, replace the plant, whatever you want to do. So this year I really wanted to be able to make my own tomato sauce, so I planted Roma tomatoes. I have quite a few of them, and then when they're done I'm going to chop them down and maybe plant more Roma tomatoes, maybe plant something else. I'm not 100% sure yet. So this Roma tomato is only this tall, and I don't think it's going to get much taller. This tomato right next door to it is already almost a foot above it. That is because the indeterminate tomatoes will just keep growing and growing as long as they have fertility or food in the soil for them. They'll keep growing and making fruits for you as long as you can keep them healthy, basically. So 2 Roma tomatoes in with that parsley. Oh, I was wrong to show you that one because that one's a Roma also. So that one is going to get probably taller. Unexpected, but I'm fine with that. And this Roma tomato has a lot of suckers on it, but it seems to be holding itself up pretty nicely. This next container is another oregano bush that I chopped down, and then a few tomatoes. So we've got a sunrise bumblebee tomato, and this is a rainbow blend of cherry tomatoes. So there's actually 3 tomatoes coming out of the ground over there, and they're just a pole rainbow variety, so they're just cherry tomatoes. I'm not sure what kind. Here's one of them. But these were being just absolutely covered by that oregano, so they are very small. The biggest one goes up to here. It's this one, but it's really thin. Doesn't look like it's doing so hot, but that's fine. They're just cherry tomatoes, and once these Romas come out, they'll have a lot more room and air and sun. Next, going down the line, is another container of Roma tomatoes. As you can see right here, there's a bunch of them coming on. Oh, these 2 have blossom end rot. That's not good. I'm just gonna pluck those off. There's another big old flush of them over here. That's a lot of tomatoes. I hope I have enough time or enough ideas to use them all. And then in with that is just a dwarf snapdragon. I don't remember what the variety is called, and I don't even think I have the tag anymore. I bought this as one little plug of a started plant, and it has spread over the last year, basically. These Roma tomatoes are Martino's Roma. The other ones were San Marzano, so those are Martino's Roma tomatoes. In this next container, we have another parsley plant, and I looked at it, but I didn't see any swallowtail caterpillars on this one, but I went ahead and left it anyway. And then we have 3 Napa Chardonnay cherry tomatoes. The other ones just over there are Napa Rosé. These are Napa Chardonnay. They grow a lot similarly. They're both supposed to be really sweet and fruity. I think the Rosé are more of a pink and the Chardonnay are more of a yellow, but other than that, they're just both really sweet cherry tomatoes. Okay, I feel like I have to explain myself for this one, even though it's my garden. I don't really have to explain myself for anything, but I feel like I should. So what's happening here, first of all, is this amaranth is doing terribly. Well, actually it's not. It's actually still growing pretty well, considering how eaten it is getting by bugs. These are caterpillars, but mostly potato beetles. I don't have any potatoes planted in my garden right now, and I guess amaranth is the next best thing, because they are all over it all the time. I actually don't see any actual beetles, which is weird. I usually see at least a few, but they are eating it down very much. So I realized that was a trap crop pretty soon after planting it, and I was fine with that. I'm fine with a trap crop. Just leave everything else alone and eat that. Perfectly fine with that. In with that trap crop is 2 more Roma tomatoes. These ones are Martino's Roma again, and obviously this one has a tomato cage around it, but this tomato cage is jank, okay? I used it once a couple years ago, but it was already secondhand when I got it. It was already broken in some places like that, like it had been cut apart. But I used it anyway, and it has been in my trash pile for about a year. But I ran out of string the other day. This jute twine, and this is some other kind of nylon string, and I ran out. But this tomato was pushing over these cucumbers. It was falling into this container. It was pushing those tomatoes back and covering the cucumbers here from light. So I needed something. So I tried to gather up the tomato and kind of get it into here. And it kind of worked. But then I got more string. So I wanted to string it. So I tried a little bit to take the cage out and realized it was probably going to be a lot harder to remove the cage and then restring it than it would be to just let it grow. Just let it grow. So this looks like a mess. And it is a mess. But I'm going to let it stay that way because this plant will probably be done in a month. And I'll be able to just remove the whole thing. Oh, hi, Bumblebee. Hi, Mr. Bumble. Good morning. So that's why this container looks terrible, basically. Okay. In this container down here, we have another pansy from Hirsch, which is spreading. I didn't know that pansies spread until I started growing them. Here is some slow bolt cilantro that not only got eaten by bugs, but also bolted rather fast. And then I have 2 cucumbers in this container, this one and this one, and these are straight 8 cucumbers. And then lastly is this zinnia, and this is a Queen Lime Blush zinnia from Baker Creek. I'm probably going to top it down pretty far once these flowers bloom. I just want to see them bloom. I want to see what they look like, and then I'll probably top it down to here and let it get more bushy rather than tall. Everyone online right now really assumes that I love zinnias, like they're my favorite flower, and I do love them. They're great, they're beautiful, they're easy to grow, which is awesome, but they're not my favorite flower. People think they're my favorite because I had quite a few videos about my zinnia last year. It's just because I haven't grown very many flowers, especially from seed. And I learned that zinnias are like hydras. If you chop off one flower, 2 more come back in its place. And I just thought that was really cool. So I called my zinnia the Hydra zinnia. I only had one big one that did really well. So now everyone thinks that that's my favorite flower. But I don't really know what my favorite flower is. I started getting into plants and gardening in high school, and at that point my favorite flower was a dahlia. There are so many different kinds, and I think that's ironic because dahlias and zinnias look very similar, especially if you're not that into gardening and flowers. So yes, I do love zinnias, but no, they're not my favorite. But yes, I will absolutely keep growing them, and they are very, very easy to grow. I highly recommend growing zinnias if you want to get into flowers. Okay, so we did this container. Now I'm going to go back down this row. We have a container of strawberries. This is the other container that is just bought from an auction from the Amish that were selling their own strawberries. I don't know what variety they are. And this is a weed. So these are strawberries. These will also go into the green stock when I get around to unplanting and then planting it out. In this next container we have a dwarf sweet alyssum, which is spreading a lot, is doing much better now that I put it in this container. Here we have a parsley plant. There's nothing in this middle one. And then this is a catnip that I meant to pick up out of the container and plant somewhere else, but now it has rooted through this mesh and into that container, so I guess that's going to stay there. And then all of these are onions. My onions look very bad and they are very small. I'm mostly just using them for green onions because I let them stay in small containers for far, far too long. So now I don't think they're going to have time to really bulb up for me, but that's okay. I can use them as green onions. And then if I need these containers, I can just take them out. I really do love this sweet alyssum though. It's got like purple, yellow, pink, and white flowers. That's so pretty. They're so tiny and cute. So again, this is onions, same deal as those ones. And again, this is onions, same deal as those ones. Although these onions are getting thicker and doing much better than, say, those ones. Those ones are doing the worst. Then these are doing the best. The kinds of onions that I have are Yellow of Parma and Australian Brown. Alright, now moving from one side to the other, right here is the tomatillos that I told you I trellised on strings. So I've got this string coming down to this leader of the plant, all the way down to the base. And this specific plant has 3 leaders strung up, and a couple that aren't, like this one. That's just sitting there. So like I said, I didn't quite 100% finish, but they are looking a lot better than they were. They're not on the ground now. So this is another separate tomatillo plant. So there's one in this container, one in this container, and one in that container there. In with this tomatillo is a rosy rosemary, which I should probably prune and let grow. In this container with the tomatillo, we've got Detroit dark red beets, as well as this is a cilantro plant that is going to seed. This is a flower. I believe this is the Love in a Mist Midnight Nigella, and it's just not growing very fast. It doesn't get a lot of sun right there. And then just back here, we have an apricot lemonade Cosmo, which has flowers on it that are way up here. So this is a very tall flower. Next, in this container, we have peppers. Well, first of all, there's a basil back there, and it is a Genovese basil. That's just a traditional sweet basil. And then we have these little guys growing throughout the container, which are Touchstone gold beets, also not growing very fast. I'm not very good at root crops, I fear. A cilantro that is bolting, and then we've got 2 pepper plants. They are both Anaheim peppers. So we've got this one and this one. This one is much bigger than the other one. And then lastly, in this container, let me back up to show you this ginormous sunflower. This trellis here is just under 6 feet at this point. It's almost 7 feet over here, and then slopes downward from there. So I think it's just above 6, or just at 6 feet, just below maybe. And this sunflower is 3 feet taller than the trellis. That's 9 feet tall, basically. Now, it is in a container, obviously, so if you take 25 inches, 2 feet, it's still 7 feet tall. Even, like, if it was in the ground, from the ground to the top would still be 7 feet at least. And it's still growing every day. I notice it bigger every single day, but I do think the flower is finally starting to form up there. Not that I can see it, but that's okay. And it has a lot of side shoots. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 big ones, and then quite a few little baby ones down in there. So yeah, that sunflower is the pride of my garden right now. In this next container, we have another cilantro that is also bolting. And then these little guys in the containers are French breakfast radishes, which are actually starting to bulb up at the root. So I'll be able to harvest those soon. Those are adorable. And then in here with them is peppers. So all 3 of these are Lesia peppers. And this one is finally starting to change color. Yay! It's so funny. These peppers look so big versus the actual plants right now because the plants are still pretty small, and I decided not to prune my peppers too hard this year. In this next container, we have little baby Detroit dark red beets. This is an oregano bush. It's usually this tall and bushy, but I cut it down just the other day. And then we have 2 habanada peppers, which are finally starting to look better again. For a long time, they looked just chewed on and bad like that. They basically looked like that for 2 months. There's also a parsley plant right here, just being choked out by that oregano. Alright, next container. This is an early yellow straight neck squash. On the same day, I seeded an Italian striped zucchini, but it never popped up. So I need to reseed that. But we do have a flower open. And that one's probably going to open within the next 2 days. So hopefully some of these male flowers down here start to open so these can be pollinated. I'll hand pollinate them if I can. Then we have this container here, which is one amaranth, an Alaska variegated nasturtium, an orchid flame nasturtium, and dwarf rainbow sweet alyssum, just for some beauty. This probably desperately needs water. Oh no, it's still pretty moist. Probably just needs nutrition then. I should fertilize that. That finished the inside of the U, so now we have to walk out of the U and around this way to see the rest. Okay, I'm going to start back at this corner where we first began, where the strawberries are. We're going to talk about this container. This container is so full. There's a lot in here. So I think there are 3 pepper plants and 2 zinnias. This is quite obviously a big zinnia. And then we've got a pepper plant right here. Let's see, these peppers are, it gets hard to remember. So this one's Sugar Rush Peach. Oh, Habanada. This one's a Habanada, Sugar Rush Peach. So 1 Habanada, 2 Sugar Rush Peach, and 1 Datil pepper. There's only 1 Datil pepper because it is the spiciest pepper that I planted this year. And this is overflowing. Like, look, this is the squash from the container next to it. Moving on, we've got another Hirsch pansy. Once again, don't know the variety, just know where I bought it. And all of these sprouts down here, I think are pansies. I think these flowers, like, died over the edge and are seeding themselves. So that's crazy. We've also got a peppermint stick zinnia. This is the one that reminds me of blood splatters and makes me happy. Don't question it. It's just who I am, okay? And then we've got some chives down here. I'm not sure if they're common chives or Chinese chives, but they're one of the two. And then we've got 2 pepper plants. They are California Wonder bell peppers. Here in the front. This is a bit of my phlox, my native phlox. I call it my river flower, but it's native phlox that I just stuck in the container because I pulled it off of my plant accidentally. And this is an iris. I don't know what color. That is the phlox that I was talking about. I was moving it like this and pulled a little piece out, so I just stuck it in that other container. But in here is my native phlox, which I got from the river. Call it my river flower. As well as some purple plum radishes. We've got 1 Alaska variegated nasturtium and 2 sunbright bell peppers. Here in the front is garlic. This is softneck garlic from the grocery store, meaning I bought garlic from the grocery store. It is usually a softneck variety, and I used the small cloves, the smallest ones, and planted them here. Only 2 of them did well. Whereas the same thing, grocery store, which is usually softneck, but I planted the large cloves in this container right here. It's doing well enough, but not amazing. And then this container here is early Italian purple garlic. Oh, this is actually the other grocery store cloves, isn't it? This, I was incorrect. This one isn't the other grocery store cloves. This is music hardneck garlic. And this is the other grocery store cloves. So if you've ever wondered if you could buy garlic and grow it, you absolutely can. So here in this container, we have 2 more peppers and another zinnia. These are serrano peppers. And the zinnia is a queen lime orange zinnia, and then another pansy from Hirsch. In this container, we have 2 jalapenos and 2 banana peppers, and these are doing amazing, growing very fast and very large. Oh, I need to harvest some banana peppers apparently. That's cool. This is dead lavender and just a weed. Here we have chocolate mint. Oh my gosh! My nasturtium has a flower! This is my biggest orchid flame nasturtium, and this is the first flower I've seen. Oh my gosh, so pretty. Sorry, this is English thyme. And then in here is a tomatillo. And then that's the nasturtium. We have a little Cosmo in here. And this is a butterfly pea. It's just very slow growing, apparently. Okay guys, we are almost done. One container left. And it's this one. So in this one I have a Hopi Black Dye sunflower, Lemon Queen sunflower, Hopi Black Dye sunflower, and then Lemon Queen sunflower. It might have been backwards, I'm not sure. Oh, it was. So it's Lemon Queen, Hopi Black Dye, Lemon Queen, Hopi Black Dye. This is Lacinato Kale, and then a pansy from Hirsch, which is slowly but surely spreading. And these sunflowers are looking great, and one is blooming. How pretty. That one up there is going to be pretty big. Alright guys, I've officially been out here walking around in my garden for almost an hour just talking about my plants with you. I know that this garden tour came a little bit sooner than usual. I usually do one every month, and this is a new month, but I usually try to do it like to the date, but I would have had to wait till the 15th, and the 15th is the day that I'm leaving out of town to go to Zion, so I had to get it done. Oh, I did forget one thing. I have put a ring of rocks/bricks around my volunteer sunflowers over here, and hopefully those will do very well. There's also, just right there, that guy is a volunteer, I think it's a cucumber. I really think it's a cucumber, but that one might get mowed over because I can't transplant it anywhere, and there's not a trellis there. It would just grow along the ground, in which case it would be hard to mow our yard. So that one's probably not going to be saved, but these ones will be saved. Okay guys, please feel free to let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. I love showing you everything in my garden. It also keeps me on track for what varieties I have and where I have certain things planted. So I really appreciate you guys coming along. Thank you so much for coming into my garden with me, and I'll see you all in the next one.